Going to be talking about charter schools. We'll be joined in a few minutes with Michael Masante, who is been very involved with the charter movement, but in particular has a lot of familiarity with the District of Columbia. But until then, I'm on with Dwight Patel. And so, Dwight, how many charter schools do we have in Montgomery County?
Uh, None.
None. It's a trick question. Now, it's not a trick question. It's interesting because around the state, other counties have a lot more charter schools,
Yep.
and they actually do very, very well. And they take students from a broad cross section of backgrounds, but here in Montgomery County, we have not seen fit to include them.
Yep. And here's the thing. Uh, Now, thanks to COVID-19, the new quote normal, I think charter schools, online charter schools, that's really going to be, should be picking up some steam because right now, you've got teachers. I was reading, Loudoun County school teachers, they don't even feel comfortable teaching the kids in classroom. Honestly, the kids do need to get back into the classrooms. All experts are saying, distance learning does not work for younger kids, frankly.
Right.
Pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I would say up to third grade, because they just don't have the attention span, and we're raising a generation of kids with bad eyesight as a result of this. Are we gonna have like a loss? Is there gonna be a lawsuit against screen manufacturers like Samsung for causing glaucoma when these all kids turn 50?
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Wait a second. You're beginning to sound like a anti-vaxxer or something like that.
No, no,
Yes,
no,
no.
but
Listen, I certainly agree that um, the virtual education isn't necessarily the ideal for
no.
all education.
Hmm.
However, there are lots of instances where it really does work, and it's something that can be included in the
Yeah,
sort of the overall package. So, as you're right,
yeah,
younger kids, it's not as healthy. But for older kids, if it's done right, it can be very helpful. One of the things that's a big challenge in this whole COVID thing is you've got a lot of teachers that have had really no background or no experience in doing it, and
hmm,
they're being expected to. And this really creates an opportunity that if you're going to be educating virtually, you ought to give parents and students the opportunity to bring in um, basically charter providers that are skilled in
yep.
having charter schools and are used to being able to do distance learning, creating modules that are bite-sized, letting kids go back over information.
Yep.
uh, and that's really an opportunity that needs to be looked at here in
And you
Maryland.
had a great article which we posted on the Montgomery County Republican Club page. You did on charter schools at the time for that. And charter schools is something that we should have had 10 years ago, frankly.
Right.
Because right now, as President Bush said it so eloquently, why should we make a zip code a death sentence for a child to go to a failing school? Look at Montgomery County. We were the premier school system in the entire country back in the 80s and early 90s. Now we're just another, now we're a compilation of some really good schools and a whole lot of bad schools. My high school, which was at one point one of the best high schools in the entire country, Montgomery Blair High School, is that if it didn't have the math science magnet program, it'd be at the bottom of the bottom, so to speak. And even the math science magnet program there has been watered down.
Well, you're
And
right, and actually within Maryland, I think by most of the test scores, Howard County has surpassed, as a county, has
yeah,
surpassed Montgomery
Howard County
County.
is like the new Montgomery County, frankly. They've got better schools, better overall economy.
So we're the zip code that's been challenged.
Yeah, even if you look at the overall, if you compare test scores, even at say Walter Johnson, BCC, Churchill from the 80s to test scores that are now, I would say I'm willing to bet the test scores are still high, but they're not as high as they were back in the 80s. I think you probably had a higher, and here's the kids that are Walter Johnson, Whitman, BCC, Richard Montgomery, kids that are the math science, those kids will do good. They'll do great in any school uh, so far.
Well, that's one of the real challenges is to be able to bring up, to give people the opportunity to climb the ladder. And we look at the Baltimore city schools,
Mhm.
and they are disaster areas.
Oh
And
yeah, I mean,
as you
they
mentioned
should
before,
condemn. I mean, those schools should all be frankly condemned. It's like if you look at schools, say in New York City. Uh, by the way, Michael's going to be calling in because he's on the eastern shore of the great state of Maryland, and why internet isn't the best up there.
okay.
And that's
Well,
kind of
that's a whole nother conversation. We can
no,
have a
that
show
yeah,
on internet service here in Maryland.
yeah, or is actually it's kind of weren't we didn't we fix it in theory when we passed a special tax to bring broadband to the internet to rural communities? So what was that? It was several years ago. That was back. I want to say it was like many years ago. It was like back. They were talking about the digital divide. This is back when I was at the Coalition for Tax-Free Internet. I did a great piece. It's still out there on the false digital divide, and it was all about how rural communities weren't. I mean, like we've got friends of ours that are in West Virginia where only game in town is Comcast, and there was a study saying West Virginians are they watch the most television of any Americans in the country, and that's another thing about these distance
That's
learning.
because they can't get any internet quite.
Maine is number. Maine is number two. West Virginia and Maine, and we used to joke
The
about
terrible thing here.
we used to joke about how that was. We used to refer to Maine as West Virginia number two. Back from the Susan Collins days.
There's nothing wrong
Susan never
with
said that.
West Virginia.
There is nothing. West, by God, Virginia is a great state. Our friend Alex Mooney, the congressman from there, you know, on his site, if you want to buy a flag from his office, he will not sell you a flag unless you're from the great state of West Virginia. You have to be a West Virginian to do it. If you have put any other state down, like I was ordering for our friend Bats a U.S. flag for his to go in front of his home on his lovely porch. I tried to do it and I couldn't do it, so I had to use his West Virginia address to get Alex to send the flag over because I was. So, but back to charter schools, as we were saying, is that's another thing. It does kind of work in the whole rural broadband connectivity. How are kids in West Virginia? I mean, then again, the teachers there go on strike willy nilly and close schools down for months at a time. If I remember correctly, was it 3 to 4 weeks last year or year before last? They shut schools down because of a strike. But distance learning does make this whole stuff a lot harder to do in the midst of COVID-19.
Well, the recognition. So here's the situation here in Maryland is
Mhm.
that although the state Department of Education has come up with an overall plan, it is until in the middle of August, which is, as we recall, getting close to the start of the season, I should say the new school year,
Mhm.
to tell communities about what their plan is. And here in Montgomery County, the union is negotiating over what those provisions are, and there's a lot of give and take. And then apparently, at least to the news accounts, the negotiations are not going well. So right now, we really don't know what things are going to look like.
Yeah.
But just take basic things like how do you do social distancing on a school bus?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's Joe Biden's dream, of ending busing. He wanted to end busing.
No. So whether or not, I mean, so there's a lot of question marks about that. So we're waiting to see it. And that's one of the reasons we're promoting the use of distance learning. If we turn on, that.
He's coming on.
We can turn on.
Yep.
Mike Masani,
Michael,
welcome. I'll let Dwight do the welcome.
Hey, Michael, welcome, fellow colonial.
Hello. Thank you. I apologize for all of the confusion. It's totally on me. Mea culpa.
That's fine. We've been to Western Maryland, Eastern Shore. We've been on the Eastern Shore. I know broadband isn't the best out there. And,
I'm out here in Andy Harris country.
By the way,
I was literally just on a call like half hour ago with Andy Harris, and If it had been the other way around, I would have told him to do something about broadband.
Yeah,
But
I please, that would be very helpful. And I apologize. I got my days mixed up. I would have been on video with you. I thought this was tomorrow, but I'm very happy that at the very least I can join you right now.
Great. Welcome. So we were talking about charter schools, and actually we were talking about, I had done some writing recently about the schools coming back online this fall in Maryland, specifically in Montgomery County. And a lot of the schools are going to be looking at virtual education. We're talking school problems with school buses and the facilities and what have you. And what's unfortunate is a number of the counties, we have county school districts, are not looking at increasing the opportunities for virtual charter schools. But so that's one of the things that we were talking about. But Michael, you're very familiar with what's going on in Washington, D.C. Tell me what's happening with the schools in Washington with COVID, and how is that affecting things?
Well, so first I have to start with my joke for the evening, because I knew someone would say something about a county. At least you're not Fairfax County, Virginia, who have now declared that, you're going to get your full salary as a member of the teachers union, but you only have to show up 2 days a week for work. And, oh, wait, if you're concerned about coming in, don't worry. We'll just go 100% online and you'll still get your full pay. So you could be Fairfax County. Just remember that.
Well, we may be closer to that than you realize. We were, again, one of the issues that's come up is the plan has not come out yet in Montgomery County. Each of the counties have got to come up with their own plan. And B, the unions and the Montgomery County Board of Public Schools are in negotiations, and those are precisely the kind of issues that they're trying to work out. Is what happens if somebody's nervous about coming into school? Are they going to have to? Are they going to have to come in and teach? So,
right.
we may be going there.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, as I was saying, I was going to say my reply to your joke would be, when did teachers become members of Congress, where they get paid their full salaries for not doing their jobs?
Well, actually, that's a great setup, because there's a lot of that going on. But let's talk about a little bit more about DC and what the charter movement has been able to accomplish down there.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, when this whole thing started out, I think you saw the charter movement, especially the bigger schools, like Friendship Public Charter Schools, which actually have some schools in Baltimore. Friendship Public Charter Schools, KIP, your better charter schools, all reacted very quickly and very well. And, there's a major problem in the District of Columbia with families, especially those in wards 5, 7, and 8, which are, traditionally the low-income areas of the city, and usually have more challenges with broadband, with Wi-Fi, and it was a challenge. So the way that the District of Columbia traditional public schools and the charter schools looked at it, you had two problems. One, you had to keep education going, and two, there were legitimate issues with broadband and Wi-Fi. Now, I will tell you, just because I had been part of the conversations over the last, 10 years, the broadband problem could have been fixed a long time ago. Verizon, other for-profit companies had said, look, if we put antennas throughout the city on top of school buildings, you will capture, including charter schools, you will capture everyone that you need to capture, and everyone will have plenty of coverage. And what stopped that was, as we're all quite aware, was a government inertia. And part of it was the government started to say, well, we have DC Wi-Fi, and DC Wi-Fi is what we've established to ensure that everybody's covered. And so when you're putting yours up, we want you to put the District of Columbia's Wi-Fi network antennas next. And Verizon's like, well, that's duplicative. It's a waste of taxpayer money. You don't really need to do that. And once they heard those two terms, then they just backed out. And so that never happened. Now, what did happen, though, in a very clear and quick and efficient way was charter schools, much like my children's private Catholic schools, they did an immediate reaction first, which was a packet of materials. So let's keep things flowing to the houses. Let's make sure that at least they have, as they're walking out the door, 2 weeks worth of academic work. And in that 2 weeks, we should be able to figure out what we can. Now, most of the schools were able to put into their children's hands by having them come back to the school and do the outside pickup was a tablet, a iPad, some sort of machine, and then the hotspot. I'm not very good with technology, my apologies, but basically a hotspot that you plugged into the wall, and then it gave you Wi-Fi in the house. That was the path that most charter schools took in the District of Columbia. I would think that except those who served smaller children, and my smaller children, pre-K 3 and 4, that went very well. And most charter schools responded extremely well. I think what you're seeing now is the charter schools are hoping that they can open and sort of do this staggered students, one block, one day, clean the school, next block. Now, what they are rightly so fearful of is the economic cost and the sheer amount of materials they have to purchase to continuously clean the school at that level. They're afraid that might be cost prohibitive. Okay, so what's the next stage? Then you go online 100% and you wait until you really get an opportunity to get students safely in. So right now, 95% of the charter schools in the district are actually preparing for 100% full online. Now, most of them got to that point towards, I would say, the end of May, where they were really getting into a rhythm. They had all of their kids covered with machines, with hotspots, and now they're sort of tweaking it so if they have to go 100%, they can do so quite easily. And as I said, the larger local education agencies, because in DC, each charter school is its own local education agency, the bigger ones have already transformed and have that ready to go. Now, the one thing they are asking for the government, which has been a challenge, actually two things they're asking for the government, is one, some sort of a blanket waiver or immunity that if kids come back and somebody gets sick or a breakout occurs, that they aren't getting sued directly as the LEA, which each LEA is governed by a nonprofit board. So that nonprofit board, that LEA, could get sued, and that's one thing they're very worried about. The second thing that they would like assistance with, that they're asking for, is additional funds on the side to pay for what's known as the PPE, the cleaning, the supplies, the masks. And the way that most charter schools are doing it is they're trying to combine and go and buy at a market rate and buy in bulk from a company, because charter schools can sign their own contracts. They're trying to make that decision to say, okay, if we get enough of us together, we can go and buy together, and this will cut down as savings, or this will cut down on costs, and we can save some money by buying as big of a unit as we can.
And I know, I'm shocked to even hear Maryland's got a couple of charter schools, because I know for the longest time we had none. How is the charter school? Because I know you do more than just DC, more national. You also do national, various other places. Is Philadelphia still the best example of charter schools? They seem to have a charter school for every type of discipline you could possibly think of.
No, not really. I would think if you want to look at 2 or 3 states that have a good variety of charter schools for different things, you should look at Arizona. You should look at Michigan, and quite honestly, you should look at Washington D.C. Washington D.C. has not only early childhood charter schools, adult ed charter schools. In fact, the adult ed charter schools in the District of Columbia are putting together. There would be no adult education for those individuals seeking not just GREs and high school diplomas, but also like certificates from Microsoft, from Apple. We have schools that have exclusive deals where they are now providing certain programs and certain certifications from Microsoft. Microsoft saying, this is great. You are one of our actual trainees here in the city. We have now 7 language immersion charter schools in the District of Columbia. And one of the best things that happened in the District of Columbia was you had 6 language immersion programs. They were Latin, Spanish, 2 of them were Spanish. There were 2 French. There was 1 Hebrew, if you can believe that. There's a Hebrew immersion school. And then there was 1 Chinese, Mandarin Chinese language immersion school. So these were all elementary to middle school. And what happened was they realized that at the end of 8th grade, their children had nothing to go to. And they were going to lose all these valuable language skills that they had picked up. So what did they all do? They came together as one unit and went to the District of Columbia Public Charter School Board, which is the authorizer that creates, monitors, and can close charter schools, and said, we would love to start one high school where all of these languages, all of these programs feed into it, and then we can make it the language immersion high school. It opened, I want to say, let me think about it, probably 6 or 7 years ago. It just expanded. It's massive. If any of you would like to take a tour, I'm more than happy to set it up. It's now on the campus formerly of Walter Reed. They got one of the surplus buildings on Walter Reed's old grounds, and it's a phenomenal place where children, so now you can have children in the District of Columbia go from K to 12 and literally have a language immersion every year of their life. They could come out speaking 2-3 languages. And if you want to see something inspiring, go and look at white, black, and Hispanic and Asian children learning Mandarin Chinese together in the District of Columbia. It's something I thought I'd never seen.
Michael, it's worth kind of going back for the people listening to this to talk about just what a high percentage of kids in the district are in charter schools. I'm not sure it may be one of the highest jurisdiction, if not it's close to 50%. It's like about 45%, I guess.
It is 46%, yes, and sadly that number probably would be much higher. The only thing keeping back the growth of the charter school community is real estate, is actual buildings. Now, that could very rapidly change because we are all being forced to online learning. We're all being forced to distance learning, and that's not a problem. But I think what you're going to see is a real rethinking of what education means. And so if you can educate a child who's sitting at a computer and ensure that actual learning is occurring, then real estate may no longer be a problem. And I think as parents, one, may be fearful of sending their children back. 2, may start to realize, oh my goodness, my kid is actually doing better now than they were when they had to go to an actual building. I think you'll start to see more and more schools adopt at least some online aspect to their curriculum, to their program, and say, hey, this is great. If things get better enough and we can go into schools, that's fine. But at the same time, we're going to have an entire online program. So yes, it's 46%. But honestly, if we had more buildings, if we had more space, that could easily be 55 to 60% easily.
Sure. Now, could you elaborate on how parents get their kids into the program in the DC and how they end up selecting the schools?
Yes. So it's a lottery-based system. There is no almost all of the charter schools, 1 or 2, have not opted into the lottery, but It's a lottery system, and what you do is you go online, you register, so you're filling out basically a form, where you live, what your child, how old your child is, child's name. You fill it all in, and then you have 5 selections. So it automatically pre-selects for you what school, what traditional public school you have a right to go to by your zip code. So that's already filled in for you. And then you pick the top 5, 6 schools in which you're interested. And then the computer algorithm, and it's still sort of the luck of used to be called the luck of the draw, because that's how they literally did it. They would spin lottery balls around in the old crank lottery machines. The ball would roll out and you would get a number, and they would call you out, and you were lucky enough to get in or not. Now it's done by a computer algorithm, and it spits out, and 9 times out of 10, you get one of your top 3 choices. And then that's how you get into a public charter school in the District of Columbia.
So by 9 out of 10, what you're saying is if you're a parent and you want your kid to go to, well, one of 4 schools that you've picked, the probability is you're going to be able to get one.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Now also, and just to add on, the waiting list for charter schools in the city of Washington as a whole is about 11,000 families, 11,000 students. So, if you added that 11,000 that are on waiting lists, and that's deduping, that's deduping. That's not counting anybody twice. If you added that 11,000, we would be past the traditional public school system.
Right. And as you say, the limitation there is the availability of facilities.
Yeah,
correct.
And is the city are they working with you guys, giving you tax incentives for more people to say if they've got a abandoned building? Because DC does have a fair number of abandoned buildings in certain parts of the city. As in
Well,
converted.
Yeah, the frustrating thing there is, if you go back to Mayor Williams, who was the first mayor when charter schools started in 1996, Mayor Williams turned over 12 buildings, surplus school buildings, to the charter school community. He outright sold a number of them to charter schools. Then after that, you had Mayor Fenty. Mayor Fenty was actually no fan of charter schools. Mm-hmm. He actually tried to cut their budget a couple of times and close them down. He even gave 12 public charter schools, 12 surplus buildings to charter schools. That was over a span of 4 years. Fenty over a span of 4 years. Williams over a span of 8. When you got to Vince Gray gave 14 surplus school buildings to the public charter school community. We are now in year 6 of Mayor Bowser's term and a half, and she has given 0.
Wow.
And so right now, as we are on the telephone, there are 11 buildings that have sat empty, that are crumbling, that are magnets for crime, magnets for rats and trash and drug dealing in some areas, that sit empty and crumble. And yet she refuses to give those buildings over to the charter school community because of a very loud anti-charter, union-backed traditional school advocates who stop at nothing to stop children from learning and those buildings being turned over, purely because they know that if we went over 50%, people would start then to question the very existence of, why do we need a central office? Charter schools don't have a central office bureaucracy. Why can't we just go ahead and go all charter? So that's what literally, it's a political decision holding back the rest of those buildings being turned over.
Thank you, Michael. I know you're on vacation. You want to get back to your family. Appreciate you being on with us tonight. And real quick, Michael, I don't know if you hear they took down the GW head that was sitting right up by the Marvin Center, has been taken off its pedestal.
Yeah, I did. As an alum of that fine institution, I'm just appalled.
I'm an alum too, so.
Yeah, I'm just appalled. But if you don't mind, I just want to take 3 more minutes, if I could. There was an incredible decision handed down by the Supreme Court yesterday, 5-4. The case was called Espinoza versus the Montana Department of Revenue. I am not lying to you when I tell you that this is the biggest education case since Brown versus Board of Education. And I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with what was decided yesterday, but at the end of the day, this literally strikes the bigoted blame. Well, it doesn't literally strike, please pardon what I said. What it does is it opens the door for the removal of the Blaine amendments, which were anti-Catholic, bigoted laws put into place back in the 1800s by James Blaine of Maine, who basically said we can't have federal money going to religious schools. Now, those amendments have been used to stop vouchers, tax credit programs, anything that would say you as a taxpayer have the right, you as an American citizen have the right to choose the best educational path for your child. You as the parent know best what education should be. And so if there was a tax credit program and you wanted to use that for a private school, oh, you're fine. But the minute it was a private religious school, no, I'm sorry. Sorry, you can't do that because federal government can't fund religion because of the separation of church and state. What this decision means now is if there's a tax credit program or a voucher program in your state, especially a tax credit program, and you want your child to attend as a taxpayer who funds part of that program, a religious school, you now can. And this is huge. It's very big, and I'm happy to send anyone some talking points on it or more information. But it is quite exciting for those of us in the education freedom sector who have been fighting for years for a parent's right to send their kids to any school they want and take advantage of taxpayer-funded programs.
Now, did this strike down a state Blaine law amendment, or was this across the board?
No, it doesn't strike down any of the Blaine laws, but what it does is it gives the opportunity for either state legislatures.
Okay, so if they want to address it, okay, I got it. Yes.
Yeah. So if Maryland tomorrow wanted to say we're going to start a new tax credit voucher program, and it's going to be open for everyone, then the state, if the state started the program, then individuals who wanted to take a tax credit and send their kid to a private school could now do so.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, definitely email me what you want. I'll share it up, put it up on our county club's website, and we'll put it on our social media as well. And if you'd like to write something up, I'd be happy to post it as well. We get roughly about 1,000 unique visitors a day to our county club website.
Perfect. Will do. Well, listen, I hope what I've said has been informative. Yeah, I hope I wasn't a waste of time.
No.
And I'm always happy to speak on this topic.
Thank you. Awesome. We appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, everyone from Kent County.
Enjoy your vacation.
Kent County.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Yep. All right. Take care.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.
So that concludes this show, but we'll just remind you to follow us on YouTube. We've got a bunch of prior shows of Direct Line that are been posted there. And also make a point of following us on Facebook.
And we're on Parler now, too.